Heartless biker kicks a dog. Then Keanu Reeves teaches him a lesson. The desert highway stretched endlessly beneath the burning afternoon sun. A mirage shimmered in the distance, making the cracked asphalt appear like a river of molten silver. Sparse vegetation, parched shrubs and sun-bleached cacti, lined the roadside, their spindly forms swaying slightly in the dry wind. The world was silent, save for the occasional rustling of the wind against the rocks and the distant cry of a circling hawk. Then, a sound shattered the stillness. The low, guttural rumble of an approaching motorcycle echoed against the barren landscape. A blackened chrome Harley-Davidson tore through the desert road, cutting through the heat waves with unrelenting speed. The rider hunched over the handlebars, his black leather jacket decorated with a skull emblem, dust and grime covering its worn surface. His jeans were stained with oil, and his heavy boots thudded against the pedals. Beneath his dark sunglasses, his face was set in a scowl, his jaw tight with impatience. He was Randy Razor Cutler, and patience had never been his strong suit. Randy had spent the last decade carving a reputation for himself across the Southwest. A drifter, an outlaw, a man who took what he wanted and answered to no one. He had no roots, no family, and no concern for the world beyond his next drink or his next fight. The road was his home, and trouble was his only companion. As he thundered past an old gas station, a forgotten relic from a bygone era, a small diner came into view. Asterisk, asterisk, Marge's pit stop, asterisk, asterisk, was scrawled across a faded red sign, its letters peeling under the relentless sun. The diner itself was a squat, white building, its windows streaked with dust. A few pickup trucks and a single, rusted sedan sat parked outside, their owners likely cooling off inside with cups of cheap coffee and plates of greasy bacon. Randy slowed, the Harley's engine growling in protest as he rolled into the lot. He parked near the entrance, swinging his leg over the bike before pulling off his helmet. His dark, sweat-matted hair stuck to his forehead, and he ran a gloved hand through it before adjusting his sunglasses. With the swagger of a man who owned the world, he strode toward the diner. That's when he saw it. A dog. A scrappy-looking mutt with golden-brown fur, patches of white on its chest and paws. It had the kind of look that suggested it had known both kindness and hardship. Its ears perked up at Randy's approach, its tail wagging hesitantly. The dog sat near the door, panting, its tongue lolling out as it gazed up at him with dark, hopeful eyes. Randy stopped, a sneer curling his lip. "Beat it, mutt," he muttered, stepping forward. The dog didn't move. It tilted its head, seemingly curious, as if it could sense something beneath the biker's hardened exterior. Randy didn't give it a second chance. With a swift, callous motion, he lifted his boot and kicked the dog. A sharp yelp cut through the air. The animal tumbled backward, landing awkwardly on its side before scrambling to its feet. It let out a whimper, ears flattened, tail tucked between its legs. It took a few hesitant steps away, watching Randy with wounded eyes before trotting off toward the back of the diner. Randy chuckled to himself. "Dumb mutt." He pushed through the door, stepping into the cool, dimly lit interior. The scent of frying bacon and stale coffee filled the air. A few weary travelers sat hunched over their meals, forks clinking against plates. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes and a cigarette tucked behind her ear, barely spared him a glance before muttering, "Sit wherever." Randy took a seat at the counter, drumming his fingers against the scratched-up surface. "Whiskey." The waitress snorted. "Ain't got no whiskey." "Coffee or soda?" He sighed. "Coffee, then." As he waited, he noticed a man sitting in the farthest booth. The stranger wore a worn-out denim jacket over a simple black T-shirt. His long, dark hair was tucked behind his ears, and a neatly trimmed beard framed his face. He was reading a book, his fingers absently tracing the edge of the pages as his deep-set eyes moved across the text. Something about him seemed oddly familiar. Then the man looked up, his gaze locking onto Randy's. There was no anger, no judgment, just a calm, unwavering presence that made Randy feel, for the first time in a long time, seen. Keanu Reeves closed his book, placed it gently on the table, and leaned forward slightly. "So," he said in a quiet, steady voice, "you like kicking dogs, huh?" Randy felt a slow, creeping chill roll down his spine. Randy Razor. Cutler's eyes narrowed as he sized up the man before him. The diner's hum seemed to fade, leaving an almost tangible tension hanging in the air. Keanu Reeves, the actor known for his roles in action films and his amiable public image, sat calmly, his gaze steady and unflinching. "What's it to you?" Randy retorted, his voice edged with defiance. Keanu leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. "It's everything to me," he replied softly. "How we treat those who can't defend themselves speaks volumes about who we are." Randy scoffed, dismissing the comment with a wave of his hand. "Save the sermon, preacher. I don't need life lessons from some Hollywood pretty boy." The waitress returned, placing a chipped mug of steaming coffee in front of Randy. She glanced nervously between the two men before retreating to the kitchen. The other patrons pretended not to notice the brewing confrontation, their eyes averted, but their ears keenly tuned in. Keanu remained composed, his demeanor unruffled. "I'm not here to preach," he said evenly, "but I can't stand by and watch someone hurt an innocent creature." Randy's jaw tightened, a flicker of uncertainty flashing in his eyes before he masked it with a sneer. "You don't know anything about me." "Maybe not," Keanu conceded, "but I know actions like that often come from a place of pain." Randy's fist clenched around the handle of his mug, knuckles whitening. Memories he had long buried threatened to surface. Nights filled with anger, loss, and a gnawing emptiness he couldn't escape. He pushed them down, burying them beneath layers of bravado and aggression. "Mind your own business," Randy growled, standing abruptly. The stool scraped loudly against the worn linoleum floor, drawing the attention of the entire diner. Keanu didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small card, placing it on the counter. "If you ever want to talk," he said gently, "I'm here." Randy glanced at the card, noting a phone number scrawled in neat handwriting. Without a word, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the diner, the bell above the door jangling violently in his wake. Outside, the sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Randy approached his motorcycle, the engine still warm beneath his touch. As he swung his leg over the seat, he caught sight of the dog he had kicked earlier. It stood at a distance, watching him with wary eyes, its tail tucked low. For a moment, guilt gnawed at him, but he shook it off, revving the engine and speeding away, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Inside the diner, Keanu watched through the window as Randy disappeared down the highway. The waitress approached cautiously, her curiosity evident. "Do you know him?" she asked, refilling his coffee. Keanu shook his head. "No," he replied, "but I've met many like him." She frowned, glancing toward the door. "Think he'll be back?" "Maybe," Keanu said, a hint of hope in his voice. "Sometimes all it takes is a small act of kindness to start a change." The waitress nodded thoughtfully before returning to her duties. Keanu took a sip of his coffee, his mind reflecting on his own journey, one filled with personal loss, resilience, and a commitment to making the world a better place, one person at a time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the desert landscape was bathed in a warm, golden glow. The dog, now resting near the diner's entrance, lifted its head, ears perked, as if sensing a shift in the air. And somewhere down the road, Randy Razor Cutler rode on, the small car with Keanu's number tucked into his jacket pocket, and a tumultuous storm of emotions brewing within him. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desolate highway as Randy Razor Cutler sped away from Marge's pit stop. The encounter with Keanu Reeves gnawed at him, stirring emotions he had long buried beneath layers of anger and indifference. The actor's calm demeanor and piercing words had struck a nerve, challenging the hardened biker's self-perception. As night enveloped the desert, Randy's thoughts drifted to his past, a series of painful memories he had tried to escape. He recalled the loss of his parents at a young age, bouncing between foster homes, and the eventual descent into a life of rebellion and lawlessness. The open road became his refuge, a place where he could outrun his demons, or so he thought. Meanwhile, back at the diner, Keanu Reeves couldn't shake the image of the wounded dog and the troubled man who had harmed it. His own experiences with loss and hardship had taught him the value of compassion and the profound impact of small acts of kindness. determined to make a difference. He decided to stay in the area a bit longer, hoping for another chance to reach out to Randy. The following day, Randy found himself restless, the previous day's events replaying in his mind. He rode aimlessly, the roar of his Harley unable to drown out his inner turmoil. As he passed through a small town, he noticed a commotion near the local animal shelter. Curiosity piqued. He pulled over and approached the scene. A group of volunteers was gathered around a makeshift pen, where several dogs barked and wagged their tails. Among them was the same dog Randy had kicked, the golden brown mutt with patches of white. Despite its previous encounter, the dog seemed eager for attention, its tail wagging furiously as it spotted Randy. "Hey there!" A voice called out, pulling Randy from his thoughts. He turned to see a woman in her mid-30s, her hands covered in dirt and a warm smile on her face. "We're hosting an adoption event. Interested in giving a dog a home." Randy hesitated, his gaze shifting back to the dog. The idea of responsibility, of caring for another living being, was foreign to him. "I don't know," he muttered, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. The woman noticed his uncertainty and extended a hand. "I'm Sarah, by the way. Why don't you spend some time with him? You might be surprised." Reluctantly, Randy agreed. As he sat on a nearby bench, the dog approached cautiously, sniffing his boots before resting its head on his knee. A strange sensation washed over Randy, a mix of guilt and an unfamiliar warmth. Over the next hour, Randy found himself opening up to Sarah, sharing bits of his past he had long kept buried. She listened without judgment, offering understanding and sharing her own stories of overcoming adversity. For the first time in years, Randy felt a glimmer of connection, a sense that perhaps he was as alone as he had always believed. As the sun began to set, Sarah handed Randy a flyer. "We're always looking for volunteers. No pressure, but if you ever want to help out, we'd love to have you." Randy took the flyer, nodding. "I'll think about it." That night, back in his motel room, Randy stared at the flyer, the dog's hopeful eyes etched into his memory. The walls he had built around himself were beginning to crack, and he wasn't sure how to handle the flood of emotions threatening to break through. Elsewhere, Keanu Reeves sat in his hotel room, researching local outreach programs and shelters. He believed in the power of community and knew that real change often started with small, local efforts. His own journey had been filled with personal loss and challenges, but it was through helping others that he had found healing and purpose. The next morning, Randy made a decision. He rode back to the animal shelter, the rumble of his motorcycle announcing his arrival. Sarah greeted him with a surprised smile. "Back so soon?" Randy shrugged, trying to mask his nervousness. "Thought I'd see if you still needed volunteers." Over the next few days, Randy immersed himself in the shelter's activities. He cleaned kennels, walked dogs, and even started to learn about basic training techniques. The work was hard but rewarding, and he found solace in the routine. The golden brown mutt, whom Sarah had named Buddy, became his constant companion, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. However, Randy's transformation wasn't without challenges. His old gang, the Desert Reapers, had noticed his absence and were less than pleased. One evening, as Randy was closing up the shelter, a group of bikers roared into the parking lot, their leader, a burly man with a jagged scar across his cheek, eyeing Randy with disdain. "Razor," the leader sneered, using Randy's old nickname. "Heard you gone soft on us. Trading in your bike for a pooper scooper?" Randy squared his shoulders, meeting the leader's gaze. "I'm done with that life, Snake. I found something better." Snake laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think you?" Randy Razor Cutler stood his ground, facing Snake and the other members of the Desert Reapers. The tension was palpable, the weight of his past life pressing heavily upon him. "You think you can just walk away?" Snake sneered, his voice dripping with menace. "I'm done with the Reapers," Randy replied firmly. "I found something better." Snake's eyes narrowed. "Once a Reaper, always a Reaper. You owe us, Razor." Randy's mind raced. He knew the Reapers wouldn't let him go easily. Leaving the gang was seen as betrayal, and betrayal had consequences. "I don't owe you anything," Randy retorted, though uncertainty gnawed at him. Snake took a step closer, his presence imposing. "We'll see about that." With a final glare, he signaled to the others, and they roared away, leaving Randy with a sinking feeling. Inside the shelter, Sarah noticed Randy's troubled expression as he re-entered. "Everything okay?" she asked, concern evident in her eyes. Randy forced a smile. "Yeah, just some old acquaintances." She didn't press further, but her worry lingered. Over the next few days, Randy's unease grew. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. One evening, as he was locking up the shelter, he found a threatening note pinned to the door. "Leave now, or else." Fear and anger churned within him. He had worked hard to turn his life around, and now his past threatened to destroy everything. Desperate for guidance, Randy remembered the card Keanu Reeves had given him. Swallowing his pride, he dialed the number. "Hello." Keanu's voice was calm, reassuring. "It's Randy," he said, his voice wavering. I need help." "Where are you?" Keanu asked without hesitation. Randy gave him the address, and within an hour, Keanu arrived at the shelter. They sat in the dimly lit office, the weight of Randy's troubles hanging heavy in the air. "The Reapers won't let me go," Randy confessed. "They're threatening me, the shelter, everything." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "Leaving the gang is never easy, but you made strides to change your life. That takes courage." "Courage?" Randy scoffed. "I'm scared out of my mind." "Fear is natural," Keanu replied gently. "It's what you do with that fear that defines you." Randy looked down, his hands trembling. "I don't want anyone else to get hurt because of me." Keanu placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll figure this out together." The next day, Keanu reached out to a friend, Detective Maria Lopez, who specialized in gang-related cases. She agreed to meet with them at a local cafe. "Leaving a gang is like leaving a cult," Detective Lopez explained. "They see it as a betrayal, but there are programs to help people in your situation." "Programs?" Randy asked, skepticism evident in his tone. "Witness protection, relocation assistance," she elaborated. "But it requires full cooperation." Randy glanced at Keanu, who gave an encouraging nod. "I just want a normal life," Randy admitted. "Then let's make that happen," Detective Lopez said with determination. As they began the process, the Reaper's threats escalated. One evening, Randy arrived at the shelter to find the windows smashed and graffiti scrawled across the walls. "Traitor?" Sarah was visibly shaken. "This is getting out of hand," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry," Randy whispered, guilt weighing heavily on him. "It's not your fault," she replied, placing a hand on his arm. "But we need to protect the animals and ourselves." Determined to stand up to his past, Randy, with Keanu and Detective Lopez's support, decided to confront the Reapers. They arranged a meeting in a neutral location, a deserted warehouse on the outskirts of town. As Randy entered the dimly lit space, the familiar scent of oil and metal filled his nostrils. The Reapers stood in a semicircle, Snake at the center. "You got guts showing up here," Snake sneered. "I'm not here to fight," Randy said, his voice steady. "I just want out." Snake laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "It's not that simple. I'm willing to make amends." Randy Razor, Cutler stood in the dimly lit warehouse, the weight of his past pressing heavily upon him. Facing Snake and the Desert Reapers, he felt the familiar pull of his former life, a life filled with chaos and violence. "You think you can just walk away?" Snake's voice dripped with menace, his eyes narrowing as he took a step closer. "I'm done with the Reapers," Randy replied, his voice steady but his heart pounding. "I've found something better." Snake's sneer deepened. "Once a Reaper, always a Reaper. You owe us, Razor." The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with unspoken threats. Randy knew that leaving the gang wouldn't be easy, but he hadn't anticipated the depth of their resentment. "I don't owe you anything," Randy retorted, though uncertainty gnawed at him. Snake's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "We'll see about that." With a final glare, he signaled to the others, and they roared away, leaving Randy with a sinking feeling. Back at the shelter, Sarah noticed Randy's troubled expression as he re-entered. "Everything okay?" she asked, concern evident in her eyes. Randy forced a smile. Yeah, just some old acquaintances. She didn't press further, but her worry lingered. Over the next few days, Randy's unease grew. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. One evening, as he was locking up the shelter, he found a threatening note pinned to the door. Leave now or else. Fear and anger churned within him. He had worked hard to turn his life around, and now his past threatened to destroy everything. Desperate for guidance, Randy remembered the card Keanu Reeves had given him. Swallowing his pride, he dialed a number. Hello. Keanu's voice was calm, reassuring. It's Randy, he said, his voice wavering. I need help. Where are you? Keanu asked without hesitation. Randy gave him the address, and within an hour, Keanu arrived at the shelter. They sat in the dimly lit office, the weight of Randy's troubles hanging heavy in the air. The Reapers won't let me go, Randy confessed. They're threatening me to shelter everything. Keanu nodded thoughtfully. Leaving the gang is never easy, but you've made strides to change your life. That takes courage. Courage? Randy scoffed. I'm scared out of my mind. Fear is natural, Keanu replied gently. It's what you do with that fear that defines you. Randy looked down, his hands trembling. I don't want anyone else to get hurt because of me. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We'll figure this out together. The next day, Keanu reached out to a friend, Detective Maria Lopez, who specialized in gang-related cases. She agreed to meet with them at a local cafe. Leaving a gang is like leaving a cult, Detective Lopez explained. They see it as a betrayal, but there are programs to help people in your situation. Programs? Randy asked, skepticism evident in his tone. Witness protection, relocation assistance, she elaborated, but it requires full cooperation. Randy glanced at Keanu, who gave an encouraging nod. I just want a normal life, Randy admitted. Then let's make that happen, Detective Lopez said with determination. As they began the process, the Reapers' threats escalated. One evening, Randy arrived at the shelter to find the windows smashed and graffiti scrawled across the walls. Traitor. Sarah was visibly shaken. This is getting out of hand, she said, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry, Randy whispered, guilt weighing heavily on him. It's not your fault, she replied, placing a hand on his arm. But we need to protect the animals and ourselves. Determined to stand up to his past, Randy, with Keanu and Detective Lopez's support, decided to confront the Reapers. They arranged a meeting in a neutral location, a deserted warehouse on the outskirts of town. As Randy entered the dimly lit space, the familiar scent of oil and metal filled his nostrils. The Reapers stood in a semicircle, Snake at the center. You got guts showing up here, Snake sneered. I'm not here to fight, Randy said, his voice steady. I just want out. Snake laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. The tension in the dimly lit warehouse was palpable. Randy Razor, Cutler stood facing Snake, the leader of the Desert Reapers, with the rest of the gang forming a menacing semicircle around them. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal, a stark reminder of Randy's tumultuous past. You think you can just walk away? Snake's voice dripped with menace, his eyes narrowing as he took a step closer. I'm done with the Reapers, Randy replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. I've found something better. Snake's sneer deepened. Once a Reaper, always a Reaper. You owe us, Razor. The gang members murmured in agreement, their expressions a mix of anger and betrayal. Randy knew that leaving the gang wouldn't be easy, but he hadn't anticipated the depth of their resentment. I don't owe you anything, Randy retorted, though uncertainty gnawed at him. Snake's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. We'll see about that. With a final glare, he signaled to the others, and they roared away on their motorcycles, leaving Randy with a sinking feeling. Back at the shelter, Sarah noticed Randy's troubled expression as he re-entered. Everything okay? She asked, concern evident in her eyes. Randy forced a smile. Yeah, just some old acquaintances. She didn't press further, but her worry lingered. Over the next few days, Randy's unease grew. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. One evening, As he was locking up the shelter, he found a threatening note pinned to the door. Leave now, or else. Fear and anger churned within him. He had worked hard to turn his life around, and now his past threatened to destroy everything. Desperate for guidance, Randy remembered the card Keanu Reeves had given him. Swallowing his pride, he dialed the number. Hello? Keanu's voice was calm, reassuring. It's Randy, he said, his voice wavering. I need help. Where are you? Keanu asked without hesitation. Randy gave him the address, and within an hour, Keanu arrived at the shelter. They sat in the dimly lit office, the weight of Randy's troubles hanging heavy in the air. The Reapers won't let me go, Randy confessed. They're threatening me, the shelter, everything. Keanu nodded thoughtfully. Leaving a gang is never easy, but you've made strides to change your life. That takes courage. Courage. Randy scoffed. I'm scared out of my mind. Fear is natural, Keanu replied gently. It's what you do with that fear that defines you. Randy looked down, his hands trembling. I don't want anyone else to get hurt because of me. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We'll figure this out together. The next day, Keanu reached out to a friend, Detective Maria Lopez, who specialized in gang-related cases. She agreed to meet with them at a local cafe. Leaving a gang is like leaving a cult, Detective Lopez explained. They see it as a betrayal, but there are programs to help people in your situation. Programs? Randy asked, skepticism evident in his tone. Witness protection, relocation assistance, she elaborated, but it requires full cooperation. Randy glanced at Keanu, who gave an encouraging nod. I just want a normal life, Randy admitted. Then let's make that happen, Detective Lopez said with determination. As they began the process, the Reapers' threats escalated. One evening, Randy arrived at the shelter to find the windows smashed and graffiti scrawled across the walls. Traitor. Sarah was visibly shaken. This is getting out of hand, she said, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry, Randy whispered, guilt weighing heavily on him. It's not your fault, she replied, placing a hand on his arm. But we need to protect the animals and ourselves. Determined to stand up to his past, Randy, with Keanu and Detective Lopez's support, decided to confront the Reapers. They arranged a meeting in a neutral location, a deserted warehouse on the outskirts of town. As Randy entered the dimly lit space, the familiar scent of oil and metal filled his nostrils. The Reapers stood in a semicircle, Snake at the center. You got guts showing up here, Snake sneered. I'm not here to fight, Randy said, his voice steady. The dimly lit warehouse buzzed with tension as Randy Razor, cutler-faced off against Snake, the leader of the Desert Reapers. The semicircle of gang members behind Snake watched intently, their expressions a mix of curiosity and menace. You think you can just walk away? Snake's voice was low, dripping with menace. Randy squared his shoulders, meeting Snake's gaze head-on. I'm done with the Reapers. I've found a new path. A murmur rippled through the gathered bikers. Snake's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint flickering within them. Once a Reaper, always a Reaper. You owe us, Razor. I don't owe you anything, Randy retorted, though a knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. Snake took a step closer, his presence imposing. We'll see about that. He snapped his fingers, and two gang members advanced, grabbing Randy's arms. Before Randy could react, a commanding voice echoed through the warehouse. Let him go. All heads turned to see Keanu Reeves stepping out of the shadows, his expression calm yet authoritative. Beside him stood Detective Maria Lopez, her badge gleaming under the dim lights. Who the hell are you? Snake spat, glaring at the newcomers. I'm someone who believes in second chances, Keanu replied evenly. And Detective Lopez here represents the law. I suggest you release Randy. Snake laughed, a harsh, grating sound. You think you can waltz in here and tell us what to do? Detective Lopez stepped forward, her hand resting on her holstered weapon. Interfering with someone trying to leave your gang is illegal. Continue this, and you'll all face charges. The gang members exchanged uneasy glances. Snake's sneer faltered, but his grip on control remained tight. This is Reaper business. Outsiders don't get a say. Keanu's gaze softened as he looked at the assembled bikers. Everyone deserves a chance to change. Holding on to someone who wants to leave only breeds resentment and conflict. Randy, still restrained, took a deep breath. I chose this life once, but it's not who I am anymore. Let me go, Snake. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then, with a reluctant nod, Snake signaled his men to release Randy. Fine, go. But remember, Razor, the road has a long memory. Randy rubbed his freed wrists, gratitude and relief washing over him. Thank you. As he walked toward Keanu and Detective Lopez, Snake's voice called out once more. And Razor, if you ever cross our path again, there won't be any talking. Randy paused, then nodded. Understood. The trio exited the warehouse, the cool night air a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere inside. Randy turned to his allies, emotion thick in his voice. I couldn't have done this without you. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on Randy's shoulder. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. You've taken the first step. Detective Lopez nodded. We'll ensure you have the support you need to start anew. As they walked away from the warehouse, Randy felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful about the journey to come. In the weeks following a confrontation with the Desert Reapers, Randy Razor Cutler's life began to transform in ways he had never imagined. With the gang's threats behind him, he focused on building a future rooted in compassion and community. A new beginning at the shelter. Randy's commitment to the animal shelter deepened. He took on more responsibilities, from organizing adoption events to overseeing the care of the animals. His bond with Buddy, the golden brown mutt who had been the catalyst for his change, grew stronger each day. Buddy became not just a companion, but a symbol of Randy's redemption. Sarah, the shelter's manager, noticed Randy's dedication. One evening, as they were closing up, she approached him with a smile. Randy, the board and I have been discussing the future of this place, she began. We'd like to offer you a permanent position as the shelter's operations coordinator. Randy was taken aback. Me? Are you sure? Sarah nodded. You've shown unwavering commitment and have a natural way with the animals. We believe you're the right person for the job. Emotion welled up in Randy's chest. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose and belonging. Keanu's continued support. Keanu Reeves remained a steadfast supporter of the shelter. Moved by Randy's transformation in the shelter's mission, he organized a charity event to raise funds and awareness. The event drew significant attention, bringing in donations that ensured the shelter's operations for the foreseeable future. At the event, Keanu took a moment to address the attendees. Places like this shelter are vital, he said. They remind us of the impact compassion can have, not just on animals but on people too. Randy's journey is a testament to the power of redemption and the difference one person can make. Randy listened from the sidelines, gratitude filling his heart, reconnecting with family with his new path solidifying. Randy felt a growing desire to mend past relationships. He reached out to his estranged sister, Emily, whom he hadn't spoken to in years due to his tumultuous lifestyle. Emily, it's Randy, he said nervously over the phone. There was a pause before she responded. Randy, it's been so long. How are you? He took a deep breath. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm trying to turn things around. I'd like to see you if you're open to it. Emily agreed, and they met at a local cafe. The reunion was emotional, filled with tears and heartfelt conversations. Randy apologized for the pain he had caused, and Emily, seeing the genuine change in her brother, embraced him. I'm proud of you, Randy, she said softly. A community united the shelter's success, and Randy's story resonated throughout the community. Volunteers poured in, eager to support the cause. Local businesses offered sponsorships, and adoption rates soared. The once struggling shelter became a beacon of hope and transformation. Randy often reflected on his journey. From a drifter consumed by anger to a man surrounded by love and purpose, his life had come full circle. He knew the road ahead would have challenges, but with Buddy by his side and a community that believed in him, he felt ready to face whatever came next. As the sun set over the shelter one evening, Randy stood outside, watching as families left with their newly adopted pets. Buddy sat beside him, tail wagging gently. "We've come a long way, haven't we, boy?" Randy murmured, scratching Buddy behind the ears. Buddy barked softly in agreement, and together they walked into the future, leaving the shadows of the past firmly behind. Months had passed since Randy Razor, Cutler's transformative journey began. The one shameless drifter had found purpose and community at the animal shelter, where he now served as the operations coordinator. His days were filled with the rewarding work of caring for animals and connecting them with loving families. A community transformed the shelter's growth mirrored Randy's personal development. With increased funding and volunteer support, they expanded their facilities, offering veterinary services and educational programs for pet owners. The community rallied around the shelter, recognizing it as a beacon of hope and compassion. Randy's story became an inspiration, demonstrating the power of redemption and the impact of second chances. Local schools invited him to speak, and he shared his journey with honesty, emphasizing the importance of empathy and personal growth. Reconciliation and forgiveness one afternoon. As Randy was organizing supplies, he received an unexpected visitor. Standing at the entrance was Jake, a former member of the Desert Reapers. His once defiant demeanor was replaced with uncertainty. "Jake," Randy greeted cautiously. "What brings you here?" Jake shifted nervously. "I heard about what you're doing here. It's impressive." Randy nodded, sensing there was more. "I want out Randy," Jake confessed, his voice tinged with desperation. "The gang! It's not what I want anymore. Seeing you change, it gave me hope." Recognizing a reflection of his former self, Randy extended a hand. "Let's talk. If you're serious, we'll find a way." This encounter marked the beginning of a new initiative at the shelter, a rehabilitation program for individuals seeking to leave behind lives of crime. With support from local law enforcement and community leaders, the program offered counseling, job training, and a path to reintegration. A visit from an old friend one sunny morning. As Randy was tending to the shelter's garden, a familiar figure approached. Keanu Reeves, whose intervention had been pivotal in Randy's transformation, stood with a warm smile. "Keanu!" Randy exclaimed, wiping his hands and walking over. "It's good to see you." "Likewise," Keanu replied, embracing his friend. "I've been following the shelter's progress. It's remarkable what you've accomplished." Randy chuckled. "Couldn't have done it without your help." They spent the day touring the expanded facilities, meeting the staff, and discussing future plans. Keanu offered to host another charity event, aiming to raise funds for the new rehabilitation program. Looking to the future as the sun set, casting a golden hue over the shelter, Randy stood with Buddy by his side, watching families play with their newly adopted pets. The air was filled with laughter and the joyful barks of dogs experiencing love for the first time. Reflecting on his journey, Randy felt a profound sense of gratitude. From a man lost in anger and resentment, he had transformed into a pillar of his community, dedicated to fostering compassion and change. Turning to Buddy, he smiled. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Buddy wagged his tail in agreement, leaning into Randy's leg. With a deep breath, Randy looked ahead, embracing the challenges and joys that awaited. His story was a testament to the power of redemption, the impact of kindness, and the belief that it's never too late to change.